Hello everybody and welcome to Guild Wars 2 Daily, not the great Guild Wars 2 countdown, there you go, Guild Wars 2 Daily. Hope you guys are having a very good day and have had plenty of time to play Guild Wars 2. I've got one question for today but also a fair bit of news as well. The footage in the background actually comes from me. This was me not really being very goal oriented, I've got to be honest. I was in the Brisbane Wildlands just running around killing stuff really, not necessarily going for any hearts. I was listening to Bon Iver Skinny Love pretty much on repeat while playing this and it was somehow quite therapeutic. So anyway, enjoy that footage. That's from me today because a lot of you did say you would prefer that we moved away from the beta footage. So I'm throwing this out to you all now. If you've got any footage of the game that's not from the betas and you'd like to have it on this show, then just send me a link to it, upload it onto YouTube and then send it to me here on YouTube and I'll get it. I'll compile a whole new list for us and then we'll start going through that. But for now, I guess we can just have me running around being a prat. That's me playing a very glass cannon-y elementalist, which probably isn't a very good idea, but that's my favourite weapon set and trait setup in the game, really, from the traits I've unlocked at the moment anyway. I love it. It's mostly for the mobility. I don't think it can be matched by any other class, but hey, I could be wrong about that. But anyway, enjoy. For news, first bit of news, really, I suppose news to some. I feel like it shouldn't be news, but it is news. The first guy to get to level 80 has kind of, this was actually sort of going on yesterday, but it's kind of expanded a bit more on the story today. So yeah, the first person to get to level 80 happened very, very quickly after the launch of Guild Wars 2. It was a guy from a French guild, and essentially what they did was he worked his way very fast. He'd very carefully scrutinized all the stuff in the betas and stress tests to know exactly what hearts would be fastest to complete, which events should be skipped, like escort events and certain big boss events and things like that. Exactly the fastest way he could do it. Got in game with two of his friends and those three just like barreled through everything as fast as they possibly could. They got to level 60 and then in that time that they were doing that, they had the rest of the guild gathering up crafting materials, and from level 60 he then powered through cooking and armor smithing, those two crafting disciplines I believe, and because crafting awards you experience, he got through those last 20 levels, the harder levels, very quickly through doing that and got to level 80 extremely quickly. So congratulations to that guy, I guess. I mean, it's always one of those things, right? World first, who's going to be going for the level 80? A lot of people were trying to do that. ArenaNet were watching it as it was happening. They had their eyes on a lot of different people that were powering their way to 80 and they were watching the methods that these people were doing. Now unfortunately this guy that got the legitimate level 80 was kind of confused for a bunch of other people that were leveling up very fast too, but those other people were using an exploit, and when the news kind of came out, Mike O'Brien did post on Reddit and said this wasn't a legitimate level 80 at first, and they said that he was patching it out, but then they realized it was legitimate and he came out, he said, look, I made a mistake, which was very honorable of him I suppose, and said no, this is a legitimate 80, congratulations to this guy, well done. And just generally everyone's talking about it. He had an interview with Guild Wars 2 Guru, which you can read, but I just feel like this shouldn't be news for Guild Wars 2 because it was never about getting to level 80. That's kind of the whole point. The level 80 combat is, and the game that you experience at level 80 is no different to the game you're experiencing anywhere else. It's the same thing. Level 80 doesn't matter, and especially with the whole flat leveling curve philosophy that essentially means you'll get to level 80 faster than in other MMOs anyway, if you look at it that way. Really, this should be a non-topic, but I guess it's an MMO and it's kind of got this baggage and this excitement people have for this kind of world first from other MMOs, and they think that it should be some kind of a big deal for level 80. I'm actually a little bit concerned that because he got level 80 so fast, that it somehow, and I shouldn't feel this way, but it somehow reflects negatively on Guild Wars 2. It shouldn't reflect negatively because we know that getting to level 80 isn't the be-all and end-all of the game, just as getting to level 20 in Guild Wars 1 wasn't the be-all and end-all. But I get the feeling that there are a lot of people that are going to look at this and say, huh, he got to level 80 that quick in the first weekend before the game had even launched, he got to level 80, that somehow they'll think that there's not much content in the game or there's not much to do, and that's a horrible thought, but I feel like that will happen. People kind of, it's a lose-lose situation in some ways, because if you tell someone it takes ages to get to max level, they're just going to assume the game's grindy, but if you tell them that you can get to it really quickly or there's evidence of someone getting to it really quickly, they'll somehow think that there's less content in the game. There's kind of this horrible situation that the developers can be in. And I don't know, I don't react to the news that someone got to level 80 really very positively, I've got to be honest, just because there could be this assumption there that the game is somehow really easy and not worth $60 worth of money because you're going to finish it so quick. Obviously, this is a very extreme situation, and no normal player should expect to be in this boat. But yeah, it's one of those things that I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. But for the guy himself, at the very least, it is an incredible accomplishment. It just goes to show what people had been doing in the stress tests and the betas, looking at every little thing, planning it all out just to know exactly what they want to do. So yeah, news to some, I guess, news, and not really news to me, I suppose, or at least I don't want it to be news. Further, there has been some stuff out of ArenaNet. They have put up, they did the strategy guide the other day, which I talked about, which you can buy, but also on their website they have a very basic kind of tutorial section now, and a lot of information about basic concepts behind the game and getting started and stuff, which you can look at, where they gave people a reminder to, which is really quite cool actually. I was tempted to do a kind of a tutorial video series thing, and ArenaNet have pretty much covered it straight away for people first getting into game, the stuff you really need to know. There it is, it's out there. So that's really cool. That's the thing that they put out that you can check it out if you want, or if you're encouraging someone new to come to the game, someone new to MMOs in general perhaps, then maybe that could be quite helpful. They also put out a reminder for North American players to pick up their physical copy of the game, which is hilarious. People have obviously been able to get in and play, but not gone and picked up their physical copies of the game, and they're just lying around. So ArenaNet put out a bit of a reminder to people to actually go and pick them up. So I guess this is me as well reminding you, if you haven't done that, maybe you should go do it. On the Europe side of things, there have still been some issues. I hear up until just a couple of hours ago there were problems again in Europe for people connecting to their servers. I've been lucky obviously because I went over to Emery Bay, which is a North American server, but yeah, apparently there have been EU server issues. Maybe not across the whole board, I'm not 100% sure, but there have been issues, which is a shame. Also, to keep you up to date on other issues, the trading post is still down for maintenance. There have been many patches. Every time one's happened, I've enthusiastically pressed the O key and had a look, but the trading post has been down every single time. So that is still going on. Who knows when that will come back up. But what I find quite interesting is thinking of how the trading post being down for so long is now going to affect prices, because if it was open from the start, then obviously you have that kind of time where everyone's figuring all this different stuff out and prices are kind of crazy. But now people will have been in game for a while and they'll actually have a better idea of value of things, like for crafting and stuff. So I'll be curious. I'm really curious to see how that happens, how high in demand the higher level crafting materials will be in comparison to the lower level materials, considering, you know, it could be quite a while before the trading post actually comes out and everyone's going to be progressing on their own through these professions without relying on purchasing the mats from others. Should be interesting, but it's still down. Another issue that affected me today, sadly, and I've seen a few people talking about it for a while actually, the party system has been a little bit odd with getting people into the right shards. You can't always right click people and select join in at wherever this place is. It's not working all the time. There are often network errors. That seems to have gone forward to the dungeons, which is a bit of a shame. So a lot of people in my guild now are level 30. We thought earlier, hey, let's go try it out, play the Ascalonian Catacombs, but we're simply not able to get into the instance altogether in one party. It's just not working, and I think that's a problem that's come about because of other issues in the partying system, not necessarily an issue with the dungeons themselves, but it does seem like a very frustrating experience trying to get into that aspect of the game. For me, I just noticed it was a problem. I didn't want to contend with it. I didn't want to see how long I could sit around and hope it would work. I just left so that I stopped myself getting frustrated, and I would recommend the same to everyone else. If it's down, just go play another part of the game, because it's not worth fussing. You're just going to get more and more irritated with it. But that's a shame, and I'm assuming that problem is also happening at the other dungeons in the game, but I'm not quite level 40 to check just yet though. So in the wake of the launch of the game, NCSoft have come out and given us some good stats. Not all the information about how well Guild Wars 2 has done, but they've given us a fair bit of information over the 3 days of pre-purchase. So when pre-purchase became available until the actual launch of the game, these 3 days that just went, over those 3 days there were 1 million sales of Guild Wars 2. That's what they said. They worded it in a way to make it suggest those were just sales within those 3 days, but I'm not sure if that's all the sales in total, including the pre-purchases before the pre-purchase weekend started, the head start actually began. I'm not sure which it is, but for a fact we do know at least 1 million people have bought Guild Wars 2, which I suppose is okay. You look at the success of the first game over 7 years, is about 7 million sales. I think Guild Wars 2's probably done a bit better than 1 million sales, so I think it is just within that weekend, which is really good. And also it has had 400,000 concurrent users logged on at one time, which is a pretty good stat. A lot of people are comparing it obviously to World of Warcraft, which at its height had 800,000 concurrent users, which is about half the size, which is quite exciting, I suppose. I'm not sure how World of Warcraft does for concurrent users right now, and I'm not sure what games like Rift or SWTOR or Ion or any other big MMO releases in recent years have done either, but needless to say, it is a very good stat. I'm not sure what it means for the future, considering very few MMOs have managed to capture the success World of Warcraft had, in that after launch they continued to grow. A lot of other MMOs recently we've seen taper off and lose their player base as time's gone on, but maybe Guild Wars 2 will be different because it's not opening foolishly with a subscription fee, and maybe just word of mouth will help it out. We'll see anyway, but that was quite exciting stats, and it's nice to see a little bit of how well Guild Wars 2 is done. That's it for proper news. I did want to update one thing that's kind of a combination, this is quite cool, of yesterday's countdown and a countdown from a while ago as well, is that I was talking about the strategy guide and how the faction strategy guide had a lot of lore in it. Turns out the Guild Wars 2 strategy guide also has a lot of lore in it, so that's another reason to buy it, even if it does become outdated. Now also, I mentioned recently how we're not entirely sure what makes something a lich in the Guild Wars universe, or in particular with Vizier Kill Bronn, we didn't know exactly when he became a lich. Was he one before the Cataclysm, or was it the Cataclysm that made him that, which is what the game seemed to suggest at. Well, apparently this strategy guide has lore which confirms that he did become a lich during the Cataclysm. So there's that, which does have some very interesting implications for what the Vizier Kill Bronn was. Maybe that was Zaitan's magic that he was somehow tapping into with the Cataclysm, and that's why he became like a master of the undead, because at the end of the day that's what Zaitan's doing, which is very cool. So yeah, that was just nice to have confirmed, and I'm a little bit more keen to get the strategy guide now. Actually, I'm playing with the idea. As for a question from you guys, I did have one I want to read, but we'll probably do that tomorrow. I do want to remind you all to send me any questions you possibly have. I did have a big long list, but they were more appropriate for the game before it was out. So let's see if you guys have got any good questions for now that it is out, and we'll see what we can do moving forward from Guild Wars 2 Daily from here on those questions. We might go to more news and then 1 question a day, or less news and 2 questions. Let me know what you think. But anyway, I'm kind of playing with things, obviously, because the game's come out and things are going to change a bit. But anyway, there you go, guys. Thank you very much for watching Guild Wars 2 Daily, and I will see you tomorrow. Have a good evening.